We were finally getting married. However, the day before the wedding, Sophia's first love, David, called. He said, "Sophia, I'm here to stop the wedding. You'll come with me, right?" Sophia's eyes reddened, and her voice trembled slightly as she said, "How dare you? How can you still show up in front of me? I don't want to see you." Despite her words, she cried on the balcony all night and even wore the necklace David gave her before the wedding. I smiled and directly called David, saying, $5 million. "Don't go back to your country tomorrow." David said righteously, "James, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you have some money." I interrupted him, saying, $10 million. He stammered, "True love is priceless. Sophia and I truly love each other." I raised my voice, saying, $20 million. He hesitated, saying, "Mr. James, this isn't right, is it?" I curled my lips and said, $30 million. "If you don't agree, I'll hang up." David responded eagerly, "Don't hang up. The story begins. If you like it, remember to subscribe." The wedding ended successfully. Most of the guests had been seen off, and both sides' close relatives had also left. The remaining ones were all close friends. They shouted that they wanted to have a great time and not leave until they were drunk. Sophia's face was flushed. She had drunk quite a bit. At least on the surface, she seemed to be in a good mood today. No matter who toasted us, she would take a sip. Maybe she drank a bit too quickly and was choked. Leaning against me, she coughed softly, her eyes turning red from the coughing. There was a pitiful look between her brows. However, a faint smile spread across her lips, looking both sad and happy. The people around looked at each other and asked me, "Mr. James, is your wife okay?" I waved my hand, put my arm around Sophia's shoulder, and smiled, saying, "She's fine. Sophia is just too happy. Today is our wedding day, and she's too excited." In fact, anyone with eyes could tell that Sophia wasn't in the right state today. She was distracted several times, especially when we were exchanging rings. She was silent for a long time. When I put the ring on Sophia, she glanced at the closed door, as if sighing or being sarcastic. She laughed, then turned back and composed all her emotions. No one knew what was wrong with her, except me. But all I could do was say sorry. She was destined not to get what she wanted today. The people at the table called out again, "Mr. James, come on, you two haven't had the cross-cupped wine yet? Hurry up, this can't be skipped." I let go of the hand around Sophia, stepped forward with a faint smile, ignoring the look she gave me. I picked up a glass of wine and said, "Forget about the cross-cupped wine. You all have a good drink and have fun. The venue here can continue. We'll change the venue later. All the expenses will be on me. I'll leave first." After saying that, I drank the wine in the glass in one gulp. At this point, if they still couldn't feel that something was wrong, they were really stupid. There was a deathly silence all around, an awkward kind of silence. But the smile on my face didn't fade. I put down the glass and turned to leave. Sophia caught up with me when I reached the lobby. She ran all the way over and tightly grabbed my cuff. She bit her lip and asked, "Where are you going?" I said expressionlessly, "The airport." Sophia asked in confusion, "What are you going to the airport for? Where exactly are you going?" I looked at my watch and said, "France, for a fashion show." Sophia frowned slightly and asked angrily, "James, what do you mean? What on earth are you going to do? We just got married, and you're leaving without saying a word?" I looked at Sophia, at the mermaid dress with soft lines she was wearing, and let out an almost inaudible sigh. This dress was handmade. I supervised the whole process. I flew abroad 4 times for it, fixed the size and details, striving for perfection. There was no doubt that this bridal gown was perfect, but today, on Sophia, it didn't look good at all. What a pity. I raised my hand and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. Then, my hand slid down her cheek to her fair neck. The moment she swallowed, I pulled out the necklace hidden under her clothes. Sophia's face turned pale instantly. She instinctively wanted to dodge, but my grip held her in place. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. So I broke the silence and said, "Don't worry. David isn't not coming. I just bought 1 day of his time with $30 million. Tomorrow, at 3 p.m., you can go to the airport to pick him up." There was no need to clarify who he was. Both Sophia and I knew it well. Because of this necklace, the one Sophia threw into the swimming pool 10 years ago, which I witnessed David buying with my own eyes. All the past events were vivid in my mind. It turned out that she wasn't the only one who couldn't forget. Walking out of the hotel, a gentle breeze blew. I pulled up my collar. The next second, a red sports car came speeding over. In a hurry, I stepped back 2 steps, but it stopped in front of me. The car window rolled down, and a woman with bright red lips said indifferently, "Handsome guy, need a ride?" I was speechless and said, "Olivia, what are you doing here?" Olivia pursed her lips non-committally and said, "Are you getting in or not?" I shook my head and declined, saying, "I'm waiting for my driver." Olivia snorted and said, "That shit yellow Cullinan has a flat tire." I was speechless. Maybe my silence was too deafening. Olivia pursed her lips and asked, "Where are you going?" I didn't want to get in Olivia's car. Our relationship wasn't that close. However, Sophia chased after me. Sophia looked at me pitifully and said, "James, let's talk." "It's not what you think. This necklace." However, the next second, a beep of the horn interrupted Sophia's words. Sophia asked the same question as me, "Olivia, what are you doing here?" Olivia smiled sweetly and said, "What does it matter to you where I am? James, get in the car quickly." Sophia blushed, came over, and hugged my arm tightly, trying to pull me back. I didn't move. Sophia's voice trembled slightly as she said, "James." I ignored her and just looked back at her. Our eyes met. I opened her fingers one by one. Sophia's face was desolate, and tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't say a word. She just looked at me silently. My heart ached a bit, but I still opened the door of Olivia's car and got in. Olivia snorted softly, full of pride. The moment the car window rolled up, she stepped on the gas pedal. The feeling of acceleration made my heart tremble. I almost forgot. This girl was still so crazy. I said speechlessly, "Ms. Olivia, cherish your life, okay?" I realized after I said it that my tone wasn't very good. I thought that according to Olivia's temper, even if she didn't retort, she wouldn't talk to me. But she just said and actually slowed down the car. I said, "Thank you." I licked my dry lips, feeling a bit embarrassed. I suddenly regretted getting in the car on impulse. Olivia seemed to sense it. She turned on the stereo and played a soothing piece of light music. Then she raised her chin and said, "There's water inside. Help yourself." I nodded and said, "Thanks." Actually, I should have chatted with Olivia for a while, but I really wasn't in the mood. So I just leaned against the car window like a slacker, looking out of the window in silence. My mind was in a mess, thinking about 10 years ago, the 10 years in between, and today. I couldn't figure it out. In fact, I knew that no matter how calm I seemed, I was sad. Besides the sadness, there was tiredness, a tiredness that seeped from my bones. I took out my phone and sent a message to Sophia. "My suggestion is that you keep your affair with David a secret for now. Let's break off our relationship slowly. We can talk in detail about how to do it when I come back. Of course, if you want to cut the Gordian knot, you'll have to bear the losses yourself." After sending the message, I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I was already at the airport. I felt like it was just a blink of an eye, but 40 minutes had passed. My heart skipped a beat. I got out of the car in a hurry and met Olivia's eyes. She was standing outside the car, drinking milk tea. Olivia asked, "Are you awake? I was going to wake you up after I finished this cup." I said sheepishly, "I'm sorry to trouble you today. I'll treat you to a meal when I get back to the country." Then I was about to turn and leave. Unexpectedly, she tugged at me and said, "Wait a minute. Let's go together." I looked at her in confusion. She continued to explain, "I'm on the same flight as you." I asked, "You're also going to France? For the fashion show?" My rusty brain thought for a while and then I answered myself, "Right, you should also be on the invitation list." I had self-explained the question, so I didn't notice Olivia secretly heaving a sigh of relief. The trip to France was very busy, almost non-stop. For these 3 days, Olivia and I went in and out together. At first, it was out of courtesy. After all, she had helped me, and I couldn't just be a nodding acquaintance like before. But as we got to know each other better, I found that Olivia wasn't as arrogant, willful, and mean-spirited as rumored. On the contrary, most of the time, she was a very understanding person, and many of her ideas coincided with mine. This made me couldn't help joking, I really hope to have more cooperation with Olivia in the future. Olivia curled her lips and said, "There will be opportunities for cooperation." We were on the same flight when we returned to the country. When we arrived at the airport, it was 3 a.m. Olivia asked me to take her car back again, and I didn't refuse. But when we walked out, we saw Sophia at the pick-up area. Sophia was wearing a black dress and standing there, looking dazed. The moment she saw me, Sophia slightly curved her eyes. However, when she noticed Olivia behind me, she frowned tightly. Sophia bit her lip and said, "Olivia, what do you want?" Olivia replied, "What do you think I want?" Sophia raised her voice, "I warn you, stay away from James." Olivia retorted, "Sorry, Who are you to warn me? Sophia said, I'm James's wife. Olivia smiled faintly and said, Really? If I remember correctly, you two haven't got married yet. Olivia was right. Although Sophia and I had held a wedding, we hadn't got married yet. We had planned to get married a month later. At first, I thought it was a bit late, but now I was only glad. Olivia's words obviously irritated Sophia. She raised her hand to slap Olivia. I immediately stepped in and stood between Sophia and Olivia. I rubbed my temples and said, That's enough. Stop making trouble. Sophia looked at me coldly, her eyes full of anger. She asked, You're protecting her? I was really headache. I didn't want to argue or make a scene. I just wanted to sleep. I said, Can we talk about it later? Sophia gritted her teeth. I could clearly see the humiliation in her eyes. She said tremblingly, Let's go back. I sneered and said, Go back where? Do you want me to go back and watch you and David being affectionate? Sorry, I don't have that hobby. David returned to the country. He came as scheduled the day after I went abroad. A friend told me about this. Sophia's pick-up of David was very secretive. Almost no one knew. The two of them sneaked around, got in the car and left as soon as they got off the plane. The friend told me they were like celebrities, fully armed with masks, sunglasses, and hats. On the afternoon I got the news, I accidentally fell down the stairs. I wasn't seriously injured, but it hurt, and the pain made my head ache. Olivia wiped the dust off my leather shoes and asked me what was wrong. I shook my head and said nothing. I just couldn't help thinking that Sophia had finally listened to me. Even now, her coming to pick me up was very correct. After all, we had just had a wedding, received a lot of gifts and cooperation. Even if it was for show, she should put in some effort. But I was too tired. I pinched the bridge of my nose and said, I just want to go back and sleep. Let's talk about anything tomorrow. When I got home, I almost fell asleep as soon as I hit the bed. When I woke up, the sun was setting. The empty room was pitch black. At this time, people's depression and sadness are always magnified, and I was no exception. I just lay there, with my eyes open, letting the negative emotions spread until they dried up and my heart went numb. I got up, got out of bed, and washed my face. Sophia was sitting in the living room. I wasn't surprised to see her. Not to mention the password of the door, even my bank card password, she knew. I poured a glass of ice water and drank it in one gulp. Sophia asked softly, When did you know? This question was actually quite stupid. I replied, You only received the call the day before the wedding. When do you think I could have known? Sorry, Miss Sophia, I eavesdropped on your phone recording. It was the day before the wedding. According to the custom, we shouldn't meet. But when we talked on the phone in the afternoon, I heard the abnormality in Sophia's voice. I asked, Does it hurt again? Sophia replied, It's okay. It doesn't matter. I knew Sophia so well that I knew she was in great pain when she said this. Almost without hesitation, I drove directly to Sophia's house. When I arrived, she was still busy, sliding the computer screen with one hand and rubbing her calf with the other. When she saw me, she was very surprised and asked, Why did you come? I shook the thermos and the decoction in my hand and said, I'm here to warm you up. Sophia said softly, I'm not that delicate. I can just do a hot compress myself. Although she said so, the joy in her eyes couldn't be hidden. I gave her the medicine, served her the soup, helped her lie down, and gently kneaded the acupoints on her calf. The atmosphere was very good at that time. I didn't need to look up to know that she was looking at me. It was peaceful and calm, and I liked it. Then Sophia's phone rang. I handed it to her. It was an unremarked foreign number, a number that I shouldn't have remembered but was deeply engraved in my heart. When Sophia was in great pain, rolling on the bed, she dialed this number over and over again, pleading one by one. It was David's number. I didn't show any abnormality, nor did Sophia. Sophia said it was her best friend who had something urgent to tell her and asked me to go out first. But she locked the bedroom door. When she came out again, except for her slightly hoarse voice, there seemed to be no other abnormality. She said to me, I'm all better now. You can go back first. I nodded, didn't refute, but borrowed her phone on the pretext of work. Maybe she didn't even know that her phone had the recording function turned on. So I eavesdropped on that short conversation. A male voice said, Sophia, if I come to stop the wedding, you'll come with me, right? Sophia choked and said, Why do you still show up in front of me to torture me? I don't want to see you again. That night, she cried on the balcony all night. We were both waiting for a result. Until before going on stage, she put on that necklace. I understood that I had waited for my result. At the same time, I also felt relieved. Fortunately, I had made full preparations. Sophia asked, since you knew everything, why didn't you do anything? I sneered and said, what should I do? Call off the wedding? Sophia, actually, I should be the one asking you. How dare you? You actually wanted to run away from the wedding. Do you know what this wedding means? If the wedding can't be held as scheduled, the liquidated damages alone are not a small amount. And there's also the stock market turmoil. Have you calculated how much loss there will be? Sophia pursed her lips and said, just because of this? I replied, what else? Sophia clenched her fists, took a deep breath, and said, if I say I won't go with him, will you believe me? I shook my head and said, adults don't talk about what ifs. Since you're here, we might as well talk about what comes next. My idea is to break up slowly. Our joint investments and jointly owned real estate can remain. Of course, if you want to withdraw, I'll take it all over. It's just that the amount of money is too large, and it may have to be paid in installments. If you can't wait. Sophia interrupted me and said, James. I asked in confusion, what? Sophia said, I need time. I was slow to react for a few seconds and then asked uncertainly, what do you mean? Sophia looked up at me. Her gaze was so calm that it was almost sad. She said, I can't forget, David, those past things. I just can't forget. It felt like a knife had stabbed into my heart, a barbed knife. When it was pulled out, it took away my flesh and blood. Sophia said she couldn't forget. It was an answer I already knew in my heart, but hearing it from her own mouth was incredibly devastating. Feelings are really strange things. Once, David was my best brother. Once, Sophia hated David. She said, David is so selfish, greedy for money, and calculating. How could you have a friend like David? But later, Sophia fell in love with David. She said, I've never seen anyone live as genuinely and open-mindedly as he does. It was only about 3 years. In those 3 years, they went from being unyielding to each other to having a mutual appreciation. And they were actually together for only half a year. It was a puppy love, hidden from everyone. Only I knew. I covered for them, and at the same time, I also hid my feelings for Sophia. I thought that was it. But then things changed too quickly. Sophia had a car accident and broke her leg. David took the $500,000 given by Sophia's family and went abroad. This almost broke Sophia. She became self-destructive, self-enclosed, and refused to let anyone get close to her, except me. Someone once asked me, is it worth it? She's clearly looking for David's shadow in you. Why do you humiliate yourself like this? In fact, it's not like that. I'm not humiliating myself, and I never thought about whether it's worth it or not. That's Sophia. She grew up with me. She's the girl I've called my sister for so many years, the one who would cry like a rain-soaked pear blossom if I didn't accompany her. She's also the one who would never let it go if someone said a bad word about me in middle school. Liking her is my own business. She didn't hurt me. When she was in trouble, I had to help. Later, when we got together naturally, I had to admit that I was also a bit selfish. I still liked her, couldn't let go, and wanted to give it a try. I thought I was successful. From 18 to 28 years old, 10 years of time. Couldn't it cover their 3 years? But it seems it really couldn't. I said sternly, give you time? How? Are you asking for time to choose between us? Sophia, don't make a fool of yourself. This was probably the first time I spoke to Sophia in such a tone. She was probably hurt by me. She bit her lip, said nothing, and turned to leave. She walked in a hurry, so hurriedly that her leg started to limp. This was the disability left over from that time. Everyone said that Sophia always walked gracefully, with delicate steps, like a refined lady. But in fact, all those were to cover up her defect. Over the years, no matter how good the physical therapy or how well she took care of herself, Sophia's leg could never fully recover. She could only walk slowly, step by step, and I was always by her side. This time, I turned my head and didn't look back. The matter between Sophia and me could be hidden from outsiders, but it definitely couldn't be hidden from our parents. When my parents found out, they were furious and threatened to settle accounts with Sophia's family. Before I could persuade them, the news that Sophia's mother was hospitalized came. For a moment, we didn't know how to vent our anger. My father sighed and said, I don't quite understand your thoughts. It stands to reason the hatred of having one's wife taken is irreconcilable. You've suffered such humiliation, and we must not let Sophia's family off easily. But now you seem like nothing has happened. Tell me, what exactly are you thinking? I replied, let it be. There's no need to make enemies. We still have business to do. We can't cut off all ties. Of course, we should still make the money we can. My father exclaimed, "You've really grown up." My father's sigh made my heart feel a bit sour. Just then, the assistant knocked on the door and came in, saying that Olivia had arrived. My father asked me, "What's going on?" I said, "Olivia has a project and wants to cooperate with me." Olivia's project was almost a sure win. Many people wanted to cooperate with her, but she chose me. I asked Olivia, "Why?" Olivia snorted and said, "Because we have a connection at first sight." I laughed and said, "So capricious?" Olivia nodded seriously and said, "Yes, I'm just that capricious. When business comes to the door, there's no reason to push it away." In the evening, we went to a dinner party together. I didn't expect Sophia to walk in. She came to me, took my wineglass, half supported my chair, and said to everyone at the table, "Sorry to interrupt you all. I shouldn't have come to this kind of occasion. But my husband hasn't been feeling well recently and can't drink too much. I'm worried, so I want to keep an eye on him. Is that okay?" As Sophia said this, she had already pulled a chair and sat down next to me, and then pretentiously picked up a mouthful of food and put it in my bowl. Olivia's face turned cold, and she looked like she was about to burst out. I gently shook my head at her. Since Sophia wanted to act out a show of marital affection, I couldn't break it in public. I could only play along. So during the whole dinner party, I was the only one who didn't drink a drop of wine. By early morning, most people had left, drunk. Only Olivia, Sophia, and I were left. Sophia threw the delicate chopsticks on the ground. The tender and affectionate look on her face was gone, replaced by resentment. Sophia said angrily, "Olivia, I don't care what you want to do. Stay away from James." Sophia grabbed my cuff and said, "Honey, let's go home." Olivia didn't back down either. She came over and grabbed my other arm. Sophia shouted at Olivia, "Olivia, let go. Don't think I don't dare to slap you." Olivia sneered and retorted, "Lainey, I've endured you all night." Sophia blushed. It seemed they were about to fight. I pushed them both away and said, "Do as you like. I'll excuse myself first." Sophia looked at Olivia coldly, but finally turned around and chased after me. She said again, "Let's go home." I took a step back and looked at Sophia, saying, "Sophia, can you stop bothering me? In fact, you've already made up your mind. Your choice is David. Then stick to your choice. Don't come and bother me for no reason. I'm really annoyed." In the dim light, I couldn't see Sophia's expression clearly. I only heard her say in a trembling voice, "I just don't want you to be deceived by that bad woman. Olivia has ill intentions. Don't believe her." I laughed softly and said, "Deceived? Ill intentions? It's probably you who has been deceiving me all these years." Sophia replied aggrievedly, "I haven't." I interrupted her and said word by word, "Don't deny it in a hurry. Half a year ago, the day after we set the wedding date, you went abroad. You stood outside David's place all night, and I did too. After you came back to the country, you got sick for a week. I took care of you as usual, asking and saying nothing. I thought it was your last farewell to the past. 2 years ago, on David's birthday, you went back to high school, to that hot pot skewer shop we often went to. The landlady still recognized you. She asked if you were married, and if it was to that tall and thin boy. You said yes. I was outside the door at that time. You were beaming with joy, but I was devastated. 3 years ago, I found that necklace in the only safe whose password I didn't know. The password wasn't David's birthday, but the day you two got together. That necklace was very cheap, bought from a street vendor for $12. You threw it into the swimming pool in front of me. You must have fished it out yourself, right? I remember you had a serious illness at that time, a high fever that wouldn't go away, a bad cold, and you lost a lot of weight. In fact, I didn't want to say all these. Saying them makes me seem so humble. I've always hated those who are overly subservient in love, but I've lost all my principles for you. 10 years, a full 10 years sunk cost. How could I let go so easily? But later I realized that no matter how high the sunk cost is, today is always the day with the least loss. So, Miss Sophia, please don't bother me. I'm very busy. Saying all this almost exhausted me physically and mentally. Sophia stood there, stunned, and didn't follow me anymore. I walked forward slowly. I don't know how long I walked. I was tired and squatted down by the roadside. After a while, Olivia's red sports car slowly drove up and stopped next to me. The car window rolled down, and Olivia looked at me with a haughty look and asked, "Mr. James, you're so heartless. You left me and walked away. Why don't you keep going?" I said speechlessly, "Olivia, I can't walk anymore." She said, "Then what are you still standing there for? Get in the car quickly. I asked, Olivia, why did you call her Lamey? She replied, well, she is. After a pause, she added, if you don't like it, I won't call her that anymore. I shook my head and said, I don't care. I just want to remind you. Don't underestimate Sophia. When she gets angry, her slap can really hurt. Olivia snorted and said, she can't beat me. I asked, really? Olivia replied proudly, yeah. I nodded and said, Olivia, I'll treat you to coffee. There's a place where the coffee is especially good. Okay. I said, Olivia, play some music. Okay. I hesitated for a moment and said, Olivia, I want to cry for a while. Do you mind? Okay. The relationship between us and Sophia's family has become rather awkward now. Sophia's mother was hospitalized, and my mother hoped I could go and visit. My mother said, Sophia's mother has called me more than once, crying and saying sorry to you. No matter what Sophia has done, her parents' care for you over the years is real. I nodded and agreed. I took a fruit basket and went to the hospital. After getting out of the elevator and turning into Ward C, I suddenly stopped. In the corridor outside the ward, a man was sitting cross-legged on the ground. He was dressed in black, looking gloomy. He was extremely thin, holding a lighter in one hand and a cigarette in the other, arguing with a nurse. The nurse said, family member, no smoking in the hospital. The man said, I won't go in. I'll just smoke here. The nurse replied, you can't smoke here either. The man objected, then what should I do? I'll die if I don't smoke. The nurse said, if you really have to smoke, you can go outside. The man shook his head and said, then tell those guys opposite to let me go. The nurse was speechless. He continued, then just let me smoke. The nurse replied firmly, no. The next second, I snatched the lighter from his hand. The man suddenly looked up, met my eyes, and then quickly lowered his head. He moved so fast that I was afraid he'd break his neck. I gave the lighter to the nurse and said, okay, you can go about your business. The nurse let out a sigh of relief and thanked me repeatedly. I nodded and walked in. I didn't plan to communicate with the man on the ground, but he suddenly got up and grabbed my shoulder, saying, Mr. James. I slapped his hand away and said in a low voice, don't call me Mr. James. He stammered, Mr. James, I gritted my teeth and said, David, I said, I'm not familiar with you. David fell silent. After a while, he sat back on the ground without saying a word. I sighed and said, didn't I give you $30 million? Why are you still smoking such cheap cigarettes? David smiled and said, I've already returned the $30 million to you. I said speechlessly, why did you return it? He frowned and said, asking you for money was just a joke. You actually took it seriously? I was speechless. David stood up again and came closer, saying, James, I'm staying at the Hyatt Hotel with my daughter. She's very cute, sensible and extremely obedient. I can't leave here. Can you go and see her? I was speechless. What was all this about? My mind, which had been focused on the $30 million matter, suddenly went blank. I asked, what? What did you say? Your daughter? David told me that he now had a 6-year-old daughter who had come back to the country to start the first grade. I asked, what about her mother? He said, she ran away after giving birth. Maybe she thought I couldn't satisfy her. I don't care. We didn't have much affection in the first place. We were just living together. Then I raised the child alone. Am I awesome? My head was buzzing. I said, David, if you're sick, go see a doctor. You don't need to tell me all these details. Because of this unexpected news, I didn't stay any longer. I turned around, left the hospital, and drove all the way to the hotel. Outside the room, I knocked on the door. A childish voice asked, who is it? I was at a loss for a moment, not knowing how to introduce myself. I blurted out, James. I felt stupid after saying it, but the door opened. A little girl with curly hair was looking at me curiously. After looking at me for a long time, her eyes lit up, and she shouted loudly, Uncle. It was so surreal. David, who had been abroad for 10 years, had a 6-year-old daughter. David had disrupted my marriage, but left his 6-year-old daughter alone in the hotel and told his daughter that James was his best buddy and that if something happened to him in the future, she should come to me. This guy must be crazy. How could he do everything so absurdly? I changed the little girl's room to the top floor and found an aunt to take care of her. She was very obedient throughout, not making any noise. After settling her down, I was about to go find David to settle the score, but Sophia's phone call came first. She said, where are you? I have something to tell you. What a coincidence. I said, I'm on my way to your house. Ask David to be there too. I arrived quickly. Sophia opened the door for me. In the living room, David was sitting on the carpet, smoking. When he saw me, he waved at me happily. I asked Sophia, "What do you want to tell me?" Sophia had a complicated expression. She frowned slightly and said, "Not everyone is here yet. I'll tell you when everyone arrives." I didn't know who Sophia was waiting for. I really couldn't think of anyone related to the three of us. But no matter how hard I racked my brains, I never expected that the last person to arrive would be Olivia. Sophia snorted and said, "You really have the nerve to come." Olivia's expression was indifferent. She didn't even give Sophia a glance. She walked straight up to me. Olivia pursed her lips and said, "Sorry, James. I didn't want to hide this from you. If you're angry with me, I don't blame you. I just hope you can give me a chance to confess to you." I asked in confusion, "Is it related to you?" Olivia said, "Yes." I looked at Sophia, then at David, and said, "Then wait a moment. I'll deal with this first." I asked Sophia, "Do you know that David has a 6-year-old daughter?" Olivia replied, "I know." I asked again, "So what are you thinking? Be with David and abandon his daughter?" Sophia shook her head continuously and said, "James, that's not what I want to tell you." I said, "But that's what I want to tell you. And you, David, I'll have someone take care of the child first. Whatever you two are thinking, leaving a child in the hotel is really outrageous." I turned to Olivia and said, "Let's go." Sophia called me, "James." I ignored her. Sophia shouted shrilly, "Do you know that David came back to the country because of Olivia's instigation?" I stopped in my tracks and turned around. Olivia was looking at me nervously. I said, "So?" Sophia asked in confusion, "What?" I looked back at Sophia and said, "What's the purpose of telling me this?" Sophia replied aggrievedly, "I just want you to know that Olivia has ill intentions. It's all her plan. Don't be deceived by her." I asked again, "So?" Sophia said indignantly, "So? So? What do you mean by so? James, don't you understand? If it weren't for Olivia, none of this would have happened. Don't you see?" I laughed and said, "It's you who doesn't understand, Sophia. David's return was just the last straw. Come to think of it, I should actually thank Olivia. She woke me up. Otherwise, there would have been endless troubles." Olivia and I had been sitting in silence facing each other for a long time. I asked, "Olivia, is it what I thought? Or did I misunderstand?" It was the first time I saw Olivia looking shy and coy. To be honest, it was quite interesting. I'm not stupid. From the day I met Olivia at the wedding to all the things that happened afterwards, I wasn't unaware of the abnormalities. I just didn't think in that direction. Olivia lifted her eyes and looked at me earnestly and intently, as if making up her mind. She said, "Yes, that's right. I like you." Olivia's straightforwardness left me speechless. I couldn't help but ask, "Why?" Olivia rested her chin on one hand and thought for a moment. "It's a bit of a long story. You probably don't remember. I studied high school in another city. The summer after the college entrance examination, my grandma passed away, so I came back here. I was really sad at that time. Because of the college entrance examination, everyone hid it from her, and she didn't even get to attend my grandma's funeral. I was so angry that I had a tantrum with my family. One day, it was pouring rain. I ran out of the house but encountered some street thugs blocking my way. They cornered me in an alley, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get out. In the end, I missed a step and fell to the ground, getting hurt and bleeding. Just when I was at my wit's end, I saw you. You had your bodyguards catch the leader and send him to the police station. Then, you took a photo of me out of the blue, gave me an umbrella, and said you'd develop the photo and give it to me the next day, but you didn't come. The distant memory was awakened by Olivia's account. I remembered that rainy day. It was a sun shower. I was on a trip to collect scenes in that alley paved with bluestones when I happened to see a girl being chased. I knocked down the leaders, and the rest scattered like birds and beasts. Just then, I saw the girl sitting on the steps. The sunlight shone down, mixing with the rain and falling on her, as if she was under a spotlight. So I picked up my camera and said, "Little angel, give me a peace sign." Pulling myself back to the present, I said, "Was that little girl back then you?" Olivia nodded. "Yeah." Such a coincidence made me can't help but raise the corners of my mouth. But then I felt sorry for breaking my promise. I said, "I didn't mean not to come." That night, Sophia had a car accident. Olivia lowered her head and replied, "I know." I started to say, "Then you." Olivia smiled and said, "I know what you want to ask. I didn't like you for 10 years. Before, I was just grateful and always thought that if I had the chance, I must repay you. I like you because of the time we've spent together recently. James, it's not difficult to fall for you. Olivia seemed determined to be straightforward to the end. Facing such an active and free-spirited girl, I was a bit at a loss. It was not until I noticed her bright red ears that I realized she had been hiding her shy side. So I said, "What about the thing with David?" Olivia, who was always straightforward, suddenly pursed her lips and remained silent. I smiled and said, "It's okay. I'm not blaming you." Olivia waved her hand and said, "I'm not afraid of you blaming me." I sensed the implication of her words. I slowly straightened up and said, "Go ahead. I can handle it." Olivia hesitated for a long time. I didn't rush her and waited for her to speak. Olivia collected her thoughts and said, "About half a month ago, I ran into Sophia in a bar. She had drunk a lot. Sophia said that if it weren't for David, she wouldn't be with you." Her words struck a chord with me. So I took $2 million and a primary school enrollment spot to find David. I wanted to know the reason. David didn't tell me why. But 2 days before your wedding, he said he was going to correct a mistake. Correct a mistake? What mistake? Probably only David knows. 10 years ago, it was the day after Sophia's car accident. I called David. He was out of breath and said, "I can tell you, no problem, but you have to come and pick me up first. I had a fight with Sophia and I'm on my way out. Damn it, this crappy place doesn't even have a car to hail." David had already eaten more than 20 skewers and showed no sign of stopping. 10 years ago, I rushed to the airport and told him to go back to Sophia's side, warning him, "If you leave like this, never come back." 10 years later, we sat by the roadside, calmly having skewers. Time is really a wonderful thing. After eating another half bowl of fried noodles, David finally slowed down. He slowly said, "Before I had my daughter Chloe, I didn't plan to come back to the country. After having Chloe, I always thought I should come back. After all, I still hope Chloe can speak fluent English. James, whether I planned to come back or not, I never intended to get involved in your relationship with Sophia again." I asked, "Then why did you get involved again?" He said, "Because Olivia called me." I asked, "So, what exactly did Sophia mean by saying she wouldn't be with me if it weren't for you?" David put down his chopsticks and said seriously, "I once said to Sophia that a young lady like her should be with a young master like you." I asked speechlessly, "When did you say that?" He said, "The 4th year I was abroad. At that time, Sophia accepted my confession. So that's how it was." I couldn't help but sigh. The sigh came out hoarse, a bit awkward and desolate. I suddenly stood up, but then felt a sudden dizziness. The next second, a pair of slender hands supported me. It was Olivia. Olivia helped me walk forward and said, "James, I'm sorry." I stopped in my tracks, didn't look back, and said indifferently, "It has nothing to do with you." I was driving my mustard-colored Cullinan aimlessly. When the car passed the same convenience store for the 3rd time, a female voice came from the back seat. Olivia couldn't help but say, "Are you lost?" I was stunned. I had even forgotten there was someone in the back. I said, "Sorry. Where do you want to go?" Olivia said aggrievedly, "I thought you'd send me home." I nodded and said, "Okay, I'll send you home." However, the next second, she stopped me and said, "How about we go watch a movie? An outdoor movie." We sat in the car, eating the popcorn Olivia bought. It was a bit too sweet. The movie was an old one. I had seen it before, but I still got absorbed in it when watching it again. I knew Olivia kept stealing glances at me. After the movie ended, I said, "When I was in school, I went out for a meal. A splinter from a disposable chopstick got stuck in my hand. It was so small that it was almost invisible to the naked eye, but it hurt like hell. My roommate said I should pick it out, but I didn't want to because it would hurt too much. The splinter stayed in my flesh for a night. It was unbearable to touch, driving me crazy. So I gritted my teeth and picked it out. I used a big needle to pierce the skin, pry it open, and pull out the splinter. Guess what? It not only didn't hurt, but I also felt a sense of relief. I smiled brightly at Olivia and said, "Sophia was the splinter stuck in my heart, and now it's been pulled out." "Ms. Olivia, thank you. But maybe this sounds ungrateful, but I probably don't want to talk about relationships in the short term." Olivia said, "I know. Actually, I didn't plan to tell you at this stage, nor did I plan to do anything. I just promised you that I'd be honest with you." Looking at Olivia's clear eyes, I chuckled. As the cooperation between Olivia and me gradually increased, my connection with Sophia was gradually cut off. When the assistant showed me the financial statements of the winery, I thought for a while and said, "Transfer it." First, ask Sophia's family if they want to take it. If they don't, sell it to others. The assistant nodded and replied, okay. Quite a few people had noticed the rift between Sophia and me. So when a friend asked, I didn't hide it and said with a smile, we had a trial marriage for a while, but it didn't work out. We probably won't get married. That night, I was busy until very late. When I was about to draw the curtains and go to bed, I saw Sophia's car. I didn't know how long it had been parked there. She was standing outside the car, looking blankly in my direction. Sophia clearly saw me and knew that I saw her. I dialed her number, and she answered quickly. I said, go back. Don't stand here. After a long silence, Sophia choked and said, James, my leg hurts so much. I listened indifferently, hung up the phone, and drew the curtains. The next day, I sent all the nursing precautions, various taboos, and the required prescription drugs for Sophia's leg to her assistant Emily in a package. 2 hours later, Emily messaged me back. Emily said, Mr. James, I almost got fired. Sophia was so angry when she got back that she smashed all the pots and pans at home. This was a rare sight for the always gentle and quiet Sophia. I thought it was probably the pain of having her habits changed. But that night, Sophia knocked on my door. Sophia looked at me with red eyes and said, James, can we start over? She seemed to have drunk a lot. Her eyes were blurred as she looked at me and said, James, don't leave me. I really won't do that again. I won't contact David anymore, ever. Let's be together well from now on, just the two of us, okay? However, the next second, a female voice came, Dear James, who's here? Olivia's hair was still wet, and she was steaming. She was wearing a big orange cat printed pajamas, wiping her hair as she asked. The moment I turned to look at Olivia, Sophia suddenly lost control. She pushed past me and grabbed Olivia's hair, and Olivia slapped her back. I quickly pulled Sophia away and pushed her out. I said sternly, Sophia, that's enough. Sophia's face turned pale. She looked at me weakly, pointing at Olivia with a trembling finger and saying, You're really with this liar? I stared back blankly and said, Sophia, you should leave. Sophia laughed, but it looked uglier than crying. Her leaving figure was extremely desolate. I had only seen such a desolate figure when she was begging David not to leave. I asked, Did you do it on purpose? Olivia's lips pressed into a straight line. She lowered her eyes and didn't answer. I sighed and walked upstairs. Olivia quickly hugged my arm, saying carefully and nervously, Sorry, I won't act like a scheming girl anymore. I shook my head and said, What are you talking about? I'm not blaming you. Stay put. I'll go get the first aid kit. Olivia said the water pipe at home burst and was being repaired these days. So today she asked if she could use my bathroom to take a shower. The pajamas she was wearing were new. Sophia probably forgot that she had once, on a whim, pestered me to buy this couple's pajamas, saying we'd wear them after getting married. So they ended up at the bottom of the trunk. After applying medicine to Olivia's head, I sent her off. She remained silent until I spoke. I said, Let's have dinner together tomorrow night. Olivia suddenly looked up, her eyes lighting up instantly. She said, Okay. Her look was really endearing. But the next day, Olivia stood me up. She said sorry to me, sounding aggrieved, saying something urgent came up. It was very noisy on her end. She said a few words in a hurry and then hung up the phone. At first, I didn't pay much attention. But a week later, the project that I had negotiated with Olivia to cooperate on was taken over by another party. The new partner was Sophia's family. Olivia's group automatically gave up the cooperation with me. I immediately went to Sophia's family group. When I saw Sophia, her eyes were unfocused, as if she had lost her mind. Sophia wasn't surprised to see me at all. She said wistfully, James, you're back. I'm so conflicted. I hope you come, but I also don't want you to come. I don't even know why I feel this way. I said coldly and without mercy, because you're crazy. Sophia seemed not to hear what I was saying. She just continued, James, I don't care about your relationship with Olivia anymore. As long as you're willing to come back, let's make up, okay? I said speechlessly, You did all this just to make me come back? Sophia snorted twice and said, Yeah. I warned her to stay away from you, but she didn't listen. So it's her own fault that I took her business away. I asked speechlessly, So as long as I don't come back, you'll fight it out with Olivia? Sophia nodded and said, James, this is between the two of us. Why involve a third person? I slowly walked closer, leaned on the table, and looked down at her, asking, Sophia, have you lost your mind? You're harming yourself more than the enemy. You turned a profitable business into a losing one. You could have bought it for $100 million, but you insisted on spending 500 million. If you have too much money to burn, then go ahead. I didn't look back. Sophia shouted hysterically behind me, if you dare to walk out of this door, I will never let Olivia go. This woman must be crazy. I sneered and said, go ahead. Olivia just lost a money-making opportunity. I can compensate her. But Sophia, your family's behavior really disappoints me. Sophia cried and asked, what about Olivia? She gave up the cooperation with you just because the cost was high. Isn't this also a betrayal to you? I smiled and said, I don't care. When Olivia entered my office, I was on the phone with my dad, discussing the concessions for Olivia. The next second, I heard her storm in and say angrily, James, I don't care about losing this cooperation opportunity. Don't worry about my losses. I can make money myself. I don't need your subsidy. In the car, I asked Olivia, why didn't you tell me? She pursed her lips and said, I was afraid you'd compromise with Sophia because of me. I said, then why didn't you think about continuing to bid against her? Olivia rolled her eyes at me and said, I'm not stupid. I chuckled and said, you're quite smart. If you had bid against Sophia, I really wouldn't know what to say to you. As for compromising, what are you thinking? Do you think I'm the kind of man who can be easily manipulated? I'm not the type to endure humiliation. But Olivia, if something like this happens again, tell me immediately. Olivia nodded and said, okay. I finally made up for the dinner that was postponed for a week with Olivia. We talked about work arrangements and shared interesting things in life. It seemed that nothing had affected us. But only I knew that my phone in my pocket, though on silent, was constantly lighting up. It was Sophia. She was calling me like crazy. Later, she stopped, and then it was David's turn. He said on the phone, do you have time? If not, come over anyway. Let's talk this out once and for all. I drove to the downstairs of David's house but didn't get out of the car. Instead, I dialed David's phone number. My feelings for David are complicated. His father was Sophia's family's driver, but I was the one who met David first. One day, Sophia's family had something urgent, and his father was called over, taking him alone. His father was embarrassed to let him wait at the employer's house, so he left him in the pavilion. He just sat there, staring at the rain curtain outside, intently. I ran out of the house and asked him what he was looking at. He said, looking at the rain. I asked, is it nice? David replied, not nice. I said speechlessly, then why are you still looking? David said, I'm hungry. I thought this guy was really interesting, so I gave him a box of cookies. The next time we met was in junior high school. I recognized David at a glance and became friends with him. From junior high to high school, he was my best buddy. I thought our friendship would last forever until he took $500,000 from Sophia's father and went abroad. Was $500,000 really enough for him to betray a relationship and abandon Sophia? I couldn't understand. Like everyone else, I was also prejudiced against him. I once thought about asking him, if you had a chance to do it again, would you regret your choice? In the phone call that hadn't been hung up, Sophia asked this question. Subsequently, David's voice came through as well. He said to Sophia, no. To be honest, I'm really grateful to your dad. Back then, your dad gave me a choice. I could either stick with you, but my parents' jobs would surely be affected, and our relationship would also face persistent obstruction from your family. Or I could go abroad, and he would provide me with the best educational resources, cover all the expenses, and offer me certain job support to some extent after I graduated. Sophia asked, then why did you come back? You messed up my life 10 years ago, and now you've ruined everything again. David, why can't you just leave me alone? David replied, leave you alone? What a joke. Did you leave James alone? James treated you wholeheartedly. What right do you have to treat him like this? Since you can't let go of me, why did you accept his confession? Since you chose to be with him, why can't you let go of me? Sophia, do you even deserve to be with James? Sophia shouted, shut up. Along with Sophia's shout, the sound of breaking glass came through. She said hysterically, if it weren't for you, I would have married James, and we would have been happy together. If you hadn't shown up, none of this would have happened. James and I. Sophia's voice choked up, and she sobbed, I love him. David laughed and said, but no one in this world has the obligation to wait for your belated realization. Sophia, even if I hadn't come back, how long could James have persevered? He might have been muddle-headed for a while, but could he be like that for a lifetime? Once a person wakes up, you won't be able to deceive him anymore. I don't believe it. These were the last 3 words Sophia said before she left. I saw Sophia come downstairs outside David's house. She got into the car with tears all over her face, and the car sped away. After a long time, David said, "Mr. James, if I had known you liked her back then, I wouldn't have been with her." I finally entered David's house, and he poured me a glass of red wine. I asked him, "Where's Chloe?" He said, "She's asleep. She goes to bed at 9 and wakes up at 7. Her biological clock is really great." I asked, "By the way, how did you suddenly find someone over there and have a child?" David drained the wine in his glass and said, "The second year I was abroad, my parents passed away one after another. It was an incurable terminal illness. I don't know if you understand that feeling. When the people closest to you are gone, you suddenly lose the sense of meaning in life. Everyone will die, so why am I still alive? I wasn't suicidal or depressed, I just suddenly didn't know why I was living. I felt bad for a long time, and then I decided to have a family and a child. But then she ran away. It doesn't matter, though. I found the meaning of my life. This child is the meaning of my life. It's not about living for the child, but a brand new person coming into this world, growing up slowly, and becoming more and more alive. That's life. Mr. James, I've always been a very practical and worldly-minded person. Love is a luxury to me. What is a luxury? It's something that if I'm not wealthy enough, I can live without it. It won't kill me. I really think that only people like you, who have no worries about food and clothing, are qualified to talk about love. That's why I said those words to Sophia. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mr. James. I'm sorry. That night, David told me a lot. He talked about his life abroad, the process of raising his child, his guilt towards me, and his guilt towards Sophia. He did feel guilty. Sophia got her leg injured because of him. He said, "Even now, when I see her leg, I still feel bad. What's done is done. I thought everyone was moving forward. We all seem to be moving forward, so why did it turn out like this?" Mr. James, actually, I don't know if my coming back was right or wrong. I just think you shouldn't be anyone's substitute. You should just be yourself because you're my Mr. James. When I got home that day, it was already dawn. Sophia was waiting outside my door, looking sad and helpless. Sophia looked at me with red eyes and asked, "James, can't we really go back?" I nodded and said, "Sophia, this time, don't trap yourself anymore. Really move forward this time." When I got home, I didn't sleep. I rummaged through one box after another in the storage room. They were all my old things. After searching for a long time, I finally found my old camera in one of them. I flipped through the photos. There were pictures of me, David, and Sophia. Then I stopped at one photo. Time seemed to go back to the past. At that time, I said to her, "Little angel, give me a peace sign." The girl turned around. Her face was injured, there were tears in the corners of her eyes, and there was still dried blood on her forehead. She looked at me with a slightly furrowed brow, looking rather speechless. But I was attracted by this scene and pressed the shutter. I said, "Little angel, here's an umbrella for you. Hurry home. Don't make your family worry. This photo is really well taken. If you want it, come back here tomorrow, and I'll develop it for you." With a knowing smile, I sent a message to Olivia. I wrote, "Little angel, do you have time? Still tomorrow, at the old place. I'll bring you the photo." The next second, Olivia called. She said, "See you then."